Welcome back to the A Train Show, the A Train Arlington Lane. My next guest coming up on the program today, he is the host of Scoop B Radio, and you can follow him at Scoop B on social media. Does a wonderful job with everything he does with the National Basketball Association. Bringing him on right now is none other than Brandon Scoop B Robinson. What's going on, brother? How you doing today, man?
Man, I'm maintaining. How are you? It's good to see you.
Good to see you too, man. And as always, I am highly I value what you do on a daily basis, bringing out the news and the association, and had you on the program in the past, and love the amazing job that you continuously do each and every day, man. So just thank you for even taking some time to come and do this.
Thank you for giving me my flowers, and I give you your flowers as well. Keep going, keep striving, keep grinding, keep doing you, and always good to talk to you.
Absolutely, man. Let's get right into it. I'm not going to waste any time, man. So far in these playoff series, we've seen a youthful movement. You don't see the LeBron James, you don't see the Kevin Durant's, you don't see the Steph Curry's in this mix. Is that a great thing for the league right now?
It depends on who you ask. I'll be honest with you. When I look at this playoffs smorgasbord, I think of 2019 where there was no LeBron, but there ultimately was a Steph Curry in the finals, and there was a Kawhi in the finals. This, of course, in 2019 when the Warriors and the Toronto Raptors matched up, but. Seeing LeBron out of it and just seeing some of the young talent that was in at that point, it's somewhat resemblant of this offseason or this playoff postseason, if you will, because you're looking at the Anthony Edwardses, you're looking at, I mean, even in round one, the Devin Bookers, but you're looking at Luka, Jokic. And then the Boston Celtics with Tatum and Brown, the law firm, as I call them. You're seeing all these different young guys that are the future. And I think it's great. And I don't even want to leave out Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Lou Dort, and Chet Holmgren and those guys in Oklahoma. I think you're just seeing a lot of people, and, of course, the New York Knicks, who are a success story in and of itself because New York has been in the down in the doldrums for so long. So I think it's good for the league, but I also will add this. While you don't see Steph Curry, you don't see LeBron, you do see the Knicks, you do see the Celtics, you have seen the Sixers, as I call them, the original 13 colonies of the NBA in those teams, if you will, and even a little bit of an ABA splash with the Indiana Pacers as well. So I think there's a sprinkle of different things. I also think that smaller markets deserve love too. I'm glad to see Orlando, even though they were knocked out, get 7 games against the Cleveland Cavaliers, another small market team. So I think it's good all around, different sprinkles of different things.
And that's amazing to see that you mentioned about the Knicks and, you know, how the resurgence they got to be in the 2 seed. And even without Julius Randle, you know, they've still been able to elevate their game and able to pull off a couple of wins. What's been the success behind that besides just Jalen Brunson and the job that he's been able to do so far?
Well, I think more than anything else, top to bottom, from coach to assistant coach to trainer to second string point guard and Deuce McBride to the doorman to the security guy, it's just a unilaterally lit movement, if you will. And so when I look at the New York Knicks and I look at, even despite the fact that Bogdanovich is out for the rest of the season and Mitchell Robinson is out 6 to 8 weeks, it's a next man up mentality. I think you saw that immensely in game 2, where Mitchell Robinson was out and Precious Achiuwa stepped up pretty well. I think you put Precious in about 20 minutes a game, you're going to see some results exponentially. But I'll add this. I think in a world where everybody's going to look at the star that's Jalen Brunson, you also have the Josh Harts that's not just effective on the court. He's a walking meme on social media for not just silly stuff, but just relatable stuff, if you will. So I think Julius Randle is definitely missed. But again, the next man up mentality has been what the Knicks have embodied, I think, for most of the season. And adding OG Anunoby was definitely a high octane move that Leon Rose and company should be credited for.
Absolutely, and like they've done a phenomenal job, and it looks like at this rate, as we're getting into the game threes and whatnot, that we're looking at a potential uh, big matchup here in the Eastern Conference Finals. Did you see Eastern Conference Finals for the New York Knicks at the beginning of the season?
Yeah, I've gone on record. I do some contributor work over at SNY in the New York Post, and I'd said to my guy Brandon London that I do think the Knicks have can make it to the Eastern Conference Finals. I think that they have the talent. I think that they have the fan base behind them. I think that they have. I just think they have it. Now, going to the finals and winning it, as a person who grew up in both New York City and New Jersey, for me, that's my local team, as well as the Nets. But I think the Knicks, they have something special, and will be good to see it. I think it's great for the city to kind of fix '94, where the Rangers and the New York Knicks were both deep in the playoffs, or at least talked about in the playoffs locally, and it's not just a first round exit. So I'd like to see that for a local perspective. I grew up watching the Yankees win World Series trophies. I grew up watching the Giants win Super Bowl trophies. I watched the Devils win the Stanley Cup. I've seen, different things, but I've never seen the local team win it. I've seen the Nets in my lifetime go to two NBA finals. I've watched the Knicks go to two NBA finals, but neither has won. I think that would be great in my lifetime to be able to witness something like that.
We got Brandon Scoop B. Robinson joining me right now on the A Train show. And as we talk in some NBA playoffs, you just talked about seeing the New York Knicks potentially get into the Eastern Conference Finals and hopefully get into the NBA Finals. It's something that hadn't been seen since 1999 for the Knicks. And, of course, he mentions about the Nets and their thing in 2003 was the last time they had made the finals. But at this case, the top team in the league, the Boston Celtics, right now, they just look really shaky at home. Just had a blowout loss against Cleveland. What's been the story about Boston and why they having so many struggles at home?
I think we often give the Western Conference praise for being an elite conference, but you look since 2020. I've seen the Detroit Pistons. I've seen the Miami Heat. I've seen the Toronto Raptors as Eastern Conference representatives play good basketball and win championships. We're 20 years into the Pistons winning. I say that to say this. Basketball is an up and down game. It's a rhythmic game. And I never felt that we should count the Cavaliers out. I've always felt that the Cavs shouldn't be counted out. But I think because they're a smaller market team and because New York wants Donovan Mitchell, we act like the Cavs don't exist, and we're just forecasting that the Cavs are going to lose and that the Celtics and the Knicks are going to play in the conference finals, and that may happen, that may not. But what if, ironically, the Cavs play against the Knicks in the conference finals and Donovan Mitchell gets a preview in New York? I think the narrative changes. If you can't beat them, join them, or if you beat them, you still join them. Like, those are things I'm thinking about further ahead. But I think when you look at the Boston Celtics, which was your initial question, I do think that Kristaps Porzingis being in and out, the chemistry is weird. I also think that he helps them in a way that I think Robert Williams, I would have liked to have seen him do, and he hasn't been the same since the 22 finals. I think that there are some things that the Celtics are missing, but I still think when you have a law firm of Tatum and Brown, you're still in the game. And I think they're going to have to make some adjustments going the distance, because I look at Cleveland and, they have some guys who have made runs in the playoffs in their own right, and Kevin Love and Donovan Mitchell. And, I like their cohesive unit. And I think that Boston has their hands full, but so does Cleveland. I think that this series could go 6 to 7 games, the same way that the Orlando-Cleveland series went 7 games. I think that these are just two young teams that I think the national audience is now getting their glimpse into what Cleveland has done all year. And they were doing that at points without Donovan Mitchell. Okoro handled his business when he needed to. Mobley handled his business when he needed to. Like, I think Cleveland is, we look at Boston as just this elite team, but I also think you have to give more credit to Cleveland for what they've done. And I also think Tristan Thompson deserves a bit more playing time. I took notes on the phone earlier today, and I am going to read this to you. Okay. So you look at Tristan Thompson and what he's done. They need to play him more, and specifically because he rebounds and how much he does the little things. I made a note of that while I was watching the game. I know people look at Tristan as a meme sometimes, and I know people look at him and his association with the Kardashians, or why is he still playing? He's tall, he can get fouls, he can get rebounds, and he can still play defense. And there's a reason why he's still able to stick around, any iteration of, playing for, the Lakers and being coming off the bench and just spelling people a minute. So I think Boston's a good team, but I also think Cleveland is too, and more people should be taking notice of that.
So we mentioned about that. I want to get to the non-playoff teams or the teams that are out in just a moment, but I want to make sure I focus on the playoff teams at hand right now. The Dallas Mavericks and the Oklahoma City Thunder, they're in their series and they're tied at one game apiece. Me personally, I was very upset when I heard that Nikola Jokic won MVP over Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, which I believe was well-deserved. You're playing with the number one team and you didn't get the MVP. Did you feel that same way with that, or did you believe Jokic was the rightful MVP in this case?
I think Shai deserved it. But I think Nikola Jokic deserved it for different reasons. I think, we pay attention throughout the course of the season to this player, that player, are the Lakers imploding, are the Warriors imploding, is Kawhi funny or not, what's going on with Kyrie, what is Draymond saying, does James Harden want this, or does James Harden want that? And the thing in the midst of all of that, Nikola Jokic and the Denver Nuggets are still kicking ass and taking names. And to me, that reminds me of a version of the modern day San Antonio Spurs. I feel that way about the Warriors at times too, where slow motion is still motion. You don't have to hit the home run in order to be effective. Like singles and doubles still go. And I think that's what the Nuggets do. And I think that is who the voters feel comfortable with. And I think that Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, if I'm him, I'd rather fly under the radar and not win MVP and use that as motivation to go to the finals and win it and being the finals MVP. That's just me.
Interestingly put. And you can see right now they're kind of in a dogfight with the Dallas Mavericks, who at times there were many analysts that were saying that the Dallas Mavericks are the team that you don't want to face in the playoffs. Is that still the case for them? Because you still have of course, you mentioned Luka and Kyrie matching up, together, and then you got this young team like Oklahoma City, who was the number one seed. Like, what is the landscape for this series right here?
I think at the beginning of the season, you definitely had questions about the Dallas Mavericks and who was going to be that third guy, and we've seen that PJ Washington was that fit, where in NBA circles, the talk was Kyle Kuzma would potentially go to Dallas or Sacramento. PJ Washington was the diamond in the rough for them, and so too was Daniel Gafford and their other supporting cast in the big man ministry, if you will. But I think when you look at the Dallas Mavericks, they are not a shark you want to play with in the shallow end or the deep end of a body of water. They're just not to be played with. And I think that Oklahoma City, as young as they are going against some seasoned veterans on that team, as well as a very veteran-laden coaching staff that Coach Jason Kidd possesses at his disposal. So I think this is another situation throughout the playoffs where it could be a dogfight. Could go 5, could go 7. But I think, again, Dallas is seasoned. Luka and Kyrie together, you know what you're getting. But I think it's so much of the supporting cast I'm an old school fast food restaurant head, and I remember with Roy Rogers, and I remember when my mom and I would go through the drive-through, and my mom would order a plain hamburger for me and ask for a fixins cup. The fixins cup are the onions, the lettuce, tomatoes, the pickle is what adds to the masterful burger. And so when I look at Dallas Mavericks, they have that fixins cup. They have the lettuce, tomato, the onion, the two pickles, and you go inside to the restaurant and push the thing down and get the sweet and sour sauce if you want to. The sweet and sour sauce in the fixins cup is making all the difference in the world for that burger. That's great, and that's the Dallas Mavericks.
Shout out to the former Roy Rogers. I don't think they're anymore around town anymore, right? Is that right?
I know of some on the New Jersey Turnpike. You can go to a Roy Rogers, and I know a couple just in smaller states. I've seen them in travels.
We got Scoop B Robinson joining here on the A Train Show. We're just touching a bit about the NBA playoffs as it is to this point right now, once we're doing this recording. Mentioned about the Mavericks and Thunder, and then the other series right now, the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Denver Nuggets. And 2 games in, and it looks like the Denver Nuggets, as he was saying, was kicking ass. They looking like their ass is being kicked. So what has been the story for the Minnesota Timberwolves and how they've been able to really shake up what Denver has to do now on their offensive right now during their offensive struggles?
I think defense is their calling card. I mean, we look at Anthony Edwards and Anthony Edwards is Anthony Edwards. Karl Towns has been knowing his role as big bro, but also taking over when he needs to. Also, I think it's guys not named Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns, Anthony Edwards that have stepped up. Naz Reid, the NBA's sixth man of the year, is really knowing his role and when to roll in and roll out. I spent some time with Nas early this season and talked about how the cohesion from last year to this year is like night and day. You really had to learn how to utilize a system that has 2 bigs and 2 bigs who roam around differently, but letting Nas Reid do his thing as well, I think is such a great, you know, a shooting guard and a small forward, or maybe 2 small forwards and a shooting guard finding a way, but you have the luxury of 2 centers. One is official defensive center and Gobert, and then Towns, who can play positions 3 through 5, and then Naz Reid, who's more of a more experienced Evan Mobley, if you will, and that's no disrespect, just a tenacious, ferocious guy that can get you threes and play in the paint. And then you mix that in with Anthony Edwards. That's a recipe for success. So I think Nas, as well as Towns and Gobert hold it down. And then, you look at Anthony Edwards. Nas told me, Nas Reid, of course, I asked him if he had to compare Anthony Edwards to any car, what would it be? And he said it would have to be a shiny red Lambo, without a doubt. And he's able to kind of move in and out of traffic effortlessly. And you got to make sure that you got the cover in the garage for the Lambo, so it doesn't speed in and out, and it doesn't have sunlight just permeating throughout the leather and the glass, and you're doing what you need to do. So the upkeep of the Lambo was cool, but you definitely got some reinforcements as well.
Absolutely, and so far they have been doing amazing. With Minnesota, could Minnesota lose a game and still win the series? Meaning, or do they have to sweep them to finish off Denver?
Well, I've always been of the notion that the playoffs are best 4 out of 7, and I think sometimes when a team goes up 2-0, you think it's over, and certain rules don't apply to certain people, and I think the Nuggets have never. I feel like I don't remember. I'll say won't have never. I don't remember in recent history where they've been down like that and having to come out of or dig themselves out of an 0-2 hole. But I have seen, in the first round, the Sixers take the Knicks to 6 games after losing the first 2. And I've seen LeBron and the Cavs in 2016 come back from being down and being down what 1-3 and coming back and winning the whole thing.
Yep.
So
Yep.
I have to be fair. You're the champs until you're not, and to be the champs, you got to beat the champs. And so I guess that's my answer to your question. I don't have any predictions. I'm just really watching these two go at it. And but I also do wonder this, right? So I look at it from that lens of being objective, but I also could look at it from this perspective. I've given you the perspective of they're not down, or they're down but they're not out. But then I also wonder this. Sometimes people are champions because of circumstances. And you look at the Toronto Raptors in 2019, they won. Kevin Durant was hurt, right?
Right. Right.
You
Right.
you look at 2021, you look at the Milwaukee Bucks. The Nets almost made it to the finals. And in fact, if James Harden didn't get hurt and if Kyrie hadn't gotten hurt, it might have been a different story.
Yeah.
The Bucks went from Budenholzer to Adrian Griffin to Doc Rivers trying to get lightning in the bottle again. They got their championship. I know there's certain people who will think that I'm crazy when I talk about the Houston Rockets in 94 and 95. 94, Michael was retired. By 95, he came back and the Bulls lost in the semifinals.
Right.
In 94, had Mike Nat gone what he did and played baseball, would the Bulls have gone to the finals? So when I'm looking at this Nuggets team, and I know people romanticize them for various reasons, but at the same time, if they lose to the Bucks, are the Denver Nuggets one of those teams like Toronto, like Milwaukee, like 95 Houston? I'm looking at it from multiple angles.
Very, very interestingly put. Because when you mentioned the Nuggets, you mentioned those teams like they got to the playoffs, but they didn't show up and got to the finals. So that was the main thing. And I know a lot of people was you mentioned that whole 95 team, that 97 Rockets team was probably one of the best teams in the league at that time, but they lost to a Utah Jazz team on a last second shot. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people wanted to see Barkley and Olajuwon go against the Chicago Bulls, and we were sort of robbed with that. But it's like, it's how the cookie crumbled at that time. So, but yeah, I understand exactly where you're coming from with that, and that's a good way to look at it. That, and you know, if you're gonna beat the champs, you got to beat them, and so this is a great opportunity for Minnesota to go ahead and keep that foot on their neck as well. All right, I want to move off from that because you said you weren't gonna give any predictions, which is okay. But there's some news that also came out. With the firing of Frank Vogel with the Phoenix Suns, and now the potential hiring of sorts, what's being rumored is Mike Budenholzer being the guy for Phoenix. If that's the case, is that a good move for the Phoenix Suns?
I have to see, because there's a lot of moving parts with Phoenix. Mm-hmm. And a lot of it has to do with the culture that's there. And I think, the biggest thing with the culture in Phoenix is that there has to be an actual culture. Mm-hmm. I was having conversations with someone in the know on the Phoenix side. And, they basically said to me that when you look at the Phoenix Suns organization, they need more basketball guys within the fold. James Jones does what he does, and I like James Jones. He stays out of the controversy and the news. I've had conversations with James Jones about books, right? James Jones is he's a knowledgeable basketball person. But the thing, or the knock that's within the Phoenix side from folks that I've spoken with, is that they employ more people who have never played the game of basketball. And you need basketball heads. Besides James Jones, from what I understand, the only other basketball knowledgeable person that's there is Rex Chapman. He's a basketball lifer. But you got to have more basketball people there. The other thing is, some people criticize the owner and feel like the owner needs more seasoning, and he's learning on the job. And I think he has certain smart basketball people around him that's schooling him, but he's still got to grow. And so I think that's the biggest thing. And I want to see him grow. Um, they're not set up to win. That's how some people view it.
Wow.
And that is partially why you saw what you saw in Phoenix. I haven't told anybody else this. I shared that with you first.
And I feel honored that you did. You shared that with me, like, because that I've heard the same rumblings that about the ownership, and that a lot of crazy things are happening in the city of Phoenix, period, not just for the Suns, but for other teams that's in the area. How it's not looking good for that culture because of um, the age gap. There's an age gap, is what they're saying right now. And so it's just interesting to me how, even with a move like a Mike Budenholzer, doesn't seem to even move the needle right now in
Well,
Phoenix.
I think, but here's the thing. Like, I know people who have worked for Coach Budenholzer. I know that there are people who have nothing but glowing things to say about him. Um, but I also think teams are cleaning house, and Budenholzer, to me, becomes part of the list of people like a D'Antoni, like a Kenny Atkinson, and even a Frank Vogel, who are constantly discussed in the I guess the musical chairs of coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that his time in Milwaukee uh, was on a time clock because of Giannis's uh, being impatient with the process, some may say. And so I think Budenholzer was on a time clock, and they wanted more of a player's coach. And Adrian Griffin early on, it was interesting to see just the fact that he was let go in season. And I think a lot of these changes with coaches, the traditional, living out a contract or getting, I think the finishing out the season
Mm-hmm.
is the traditional way of doing that is now archaic because the players run the league. And so you're seeing Giannis dictate what he's dictating. You're seeing players in the Suns locker room dictating who they want. Even in Los Angeles with LeBron and others, the same way. Like you're seeing that, and I think unfortunately a team could do bad, but somebody has to fall on the sword, and it seems as though Vogel was the guy who that happened to. And I think for Budenholzer, it's a good start because I know some people who were as upset about Budenholzer getting fired in Milwaukee as some people in Los Angeles were about Darvin Ham being let go.
Mm.
And so
Mm-hmm.
I think because everybody was saying the right things publicly, but privately it was a different story. And I think that I think it's interesting that the Suns hired the coach whose team beat you in the finals in 2021. If
Yeah,
you
that was strange, right?
can't beat them, join them. But if they beat them, pay them to come around here. But I also just think that when I look at the Suns are also in an interesting situation because of Monty Williams being let go and then going to Detroit. So Monty was let go. He goes to Detroit and he gets the bag. And he's in Detroit losing a lot of games. So it's like the money's there, but the opportunity is there, but the wins are not there. And then, goes Vogel, goes Budenholzer. It seems like the Suns are trying to revamp to find the right fit. And I think that they feel like if you have Kevin Durant, anything is possible. They have the personnel, but I also do think that they have not had a leader on the player side since Chris Paul left.
Mm. Oh man, there's so much more I want to get into, but I know I don't have the time for it right now. And I know you got some things you got going on. Tell everybody before you go, sir, um, where they can find you on social media and any upcoming guests that you may have coming up on Scoop B Radio.
Scooby Radio is available on all streaming platforms. Check it out. ScoopyRadio.net, and subscribe to Scoopy Radio on all streaming platforms. Scoopy on Twitter, Scoopy on Instagram, Scoopy TV on YouTube. As far as guests, you gotta wait and see. We've got a lot of cool things coming the next month and a half. We just had George Carl on, and that an interview took on a life of its own with some of the things that he said. So check that out over on Scoopy Radio. And yeah, man, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man, I saw that George Carl interview, man, and it was one of a kind. And it was like really hearing his knowledge on what the game is like today, and it was very refreshing to hear from him. And it just seems like he's still in good spirits despite of what he looks like right now.
For sure, yes, sir.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, thank you so much, man, for hopping on and joining me for a bit of time and touching the base on NBA. I want to see if I can get you on again, when we're getting closer towards conference finals and NBA finals time.
Okay, if the stars align, let's see what works, brother. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, man. You already know I hold, and I'm gonna say it again so that everybody can hear it. I hold you in high regard, man. So I appreciate that. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back with more of the show right after this. Welcome back to the show. We're about to wrap things up with this special edition here of the A Train Show. I want to give a big ups to Brandon Scooby Robinson for joining me on the program today. Hey, make sure that you go and tune in to Fuel Sports Network. You can go to our apps on Roku TV or go to the Roku devices, and make sure you go to your Amazon Fire Stick and you can pick up the app, search Fuel Sports Network when you can, or you can always go to gatewaycitysports.com and check out our live programming as it goes. We got some great things going on at Fuel Sports Network. Hey, I hope you get a chance to get your shirt for Autism Speaks. I know we've been posting about it. I don't know if it's ended yet, but hey, make sure if it's out there, go to Tailgating Addicts and you can get your Autism Speak shirt today. All right. I'll wrap things up for this special edition, this NBA edition of the A Train Show. And I'll catch you next time for another great show. See y'all next time.